Guruve Gaurajanjaya Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvaevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Dhanavad Pranam devotees, all praise to Srila Gurudeva, Srila Prabhupada, to our Rupanuga Guru Varga. So just wanted to answer a question that I received, of course. This was maybe 2 days ago, but I just saw the question in the email. So the question was about the nature of deity worship and the concept of deity worship. So the question was, which deities should I worship? Which deity should I have? And then they began to list, should I worship Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, which I have attraction for? Or do I have to have Gaura Nitai? And when do you start to worship Radha and Krishna deities? And so it was a pretty long email with several questions about deity worship. So I wanted to address an essential concept in the idea of Thakurji Seva or deity worship. And that's that the nature of deity worship and the nature of our sadhana or bhajan practice cannot be two separate things. So they have to have a conceptual unity. In other words, the mantras that we chant, Harinam mantra, the Diksha mantras given by Shri Guru, the practice of sadhan bhajan, beginning, of course, in the morning with whatever stav and stuti you say, and then, of course, attending the Mangalarti and singing Guru Ashtakam, and of course, in our Sangha, we sing the Mangalarti song, Mangala Shri Guru Gaura Mangala Murati, etc. And then Tulsi Parikrama and Tulsi Stav and Stuti. So you have to line all of these things up because this is your day-to-day absorption in terms of practice with the upasana or the object of your worship. So at least you have to have clear vision of how and why you're worshiping a particular set of deities, right? Also, you have to remember that worship should be ekantik. Ekantik means one-pointed. So it is not that the larger the collection of deities we have, the greater the bhakti. Or it's not the diversity of the deities we have that creates bhakti. So I'll have an altar with Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, Gaura Nitai, Radha Krishna, Sita Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman, Das Avatar, etc. So, and then a little Hanuman on the side just for good luck. So no, we have to have some conception. So first, our conception is derived from the line that we're in. And we've come in the Vichardhara of Sriman Mahaprabhu. So what Sriman Mahaprabhu has emphasized as our upasan, or our object of worship, that is the central focus of our worship. So it's very clear that Mahaprabhu descended for two reasons. One, for his personal reason, Prema Rosniyas Karite Ashwadan, and then Rag Marg Bhakti Lok Karite Pracharan. Right? Because Mahaprabhu was an ocean of mercy, Rasik Shekhar and Paramakarun, right? That he tasted himself the Unata Ujjvala Prem of Srimati Radhika, and to the Bhakta Lok, which really in this instance means more the pure devotees of other incarnations, like Hanuman became Murari Gupta, Prahalad Maharaj came as partly as Haridas Thakur, Uddhavaji came as Paramananda Puri, Pancha Pandavas came as the sons of Bhavananda Roy. So like this, to the Bhakta Lok, even Jai and Vijay, who come in this last manifestation as Jagai and Madai and are delivered by Nityananda and Mahaprabhu. So to that Bhakta Lok, the intensity of Braj Prem was given in the form of the Visesh Dashabhav towards Mahaprabhu. Visesh means the specific kind of Dashabhav towards Mahaprabhu yielded the taste of the intensity of Braj Ras. Right? So it's not that Hanuman changed his Swarup and became Brijavasi. You understand that like that? It means that in Gaur Leela, one of the Vaishishta or specialities of Gaur Leela is that in the nature of Gaur Leela, especially Kirtan Leela, the intensity of tasting the Braj Ras is there even up to Ras Leela. So how is the Ras Leela tasted? In the courtyard of Srivas, they would perform the Ras Leela in the form of Kirtan Ras Leela. You understand? So the Kirtan in the house of Srivas yielded the taste through that Harinam of the intensity of the Ras Leela in terms of the intensity of the taste of Rag Marg, right? Or the path of Rag, right? So there's probably some prerequisite information for those of you who are not really clear what is Rag, right? Like what is Ragatmik means. Those who have Rag is the essential nature of their Atma. They're called Ragatmik Jan. And those are the Brijabasis, those who serve Krishna in Vrindavan. And Raganuga means following the path of obtaining that same kind of mood in your sadhana. That is called Raganuga sadhana. So that's not the object of the class here. So I don't want to go on that track too much. So when you're doing your deity worship, it should align with the Vichardhara of Mahaprabhu, which was to introduce the glory of the worship of Shri Vrajendra Nandan Shri Krishna, especially in the mood of the gopis, etc. So this was the clear conception of Mahaprabhu. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has stated this clearly. Arajo Bhagavan Brajesha Tanaya Stadhama Vrindavana Ramyaskaschirupasana Vrajavadu Vargena Yakarpita. And he says, Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam. The Praman, the untainted, completely pure, spotless Praman for the idea that our worship is of Vrajisha Tanai, means the son of Nanda Maharaj, Krishna, in Vrindavan, and especially in the mood that was performed by the Vrajavadu, means the gopis. That is the central conception of our worship. And in order to do that, our Srila Prabhupada and our entire Guru Varga, for the most part, established two deities. The deity of Sriman Mahaprabhu and the deity of Shri Radha Krishna. Right? So in some cases you'll find also the worship of Gaur Nitai, right? Because it's going to be tantamount to the same thing. Gaur Gadadhar, right? It's particularly for those in the mood of looking at serving, in the mood of conjugal love, or Madhurya Rasa, especially in Manjari Bhav, right? And also Shri Radha Krishna. So these were the prominent deities. Now, in cases where we saw deities of Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra established, you have to make a connection between the essential mood taught by Mahaprabhu and the deities of Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra. So what is the essential mood of Shri Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra in relation to our central concept of worship, which is Radha Krishna? So, Krishna Vrajalana Jai E Bhavantra. So Mahaprabhu particularly introduced in Puri the mood of Rath Yatra being the taking of Krishna from Dwarka back to Vrindavan. So in the Skanda Purana, in Purushottama section, there's a whole description of Lord Jagannath. But our acharyas have gleaned many, many deep understandings, and you'll see them in Chaitanya Charitamrita with Mahaprabhu's dancing at Rath Yatra, etc., a meaning more directly related to Braj Bhav, right? That Jagannath represents Krishna in a deep mood of separation from Vrindavan. And very quickly, there's a pastime told that once Rohini Ma, who had spent her whole life in Vrindavan, when she was in Dwarka, all of the queens of Dwarka, they came to her apartment and they wanted to try to understand why it is that Sri Krishna has so much attraction and absorption in Vrindavan. that even though he's surrounded by so much opulence in Dwarka, even he's surrounded by the most beautiful women in Dwarka, and he has the ideal family life, 10 sons and a daughter by 16,108 of the most beautiful queens, especially 8 prominent queens. And they were asking, why is it that even in our beds at night, Krishna lays and he begins to call out the name of not other ladies, but first he calls out the names of his cows. Hey Gauri, hey Shamli, hey Mridongamukhi. Then he calls out the name of cowherd boyfriends. And finally he gets to calling out the name of various gopis. How could it be? And when he cries the name of these gopis, profuse tears come from his eyes, completely wetting the bedstead. So how is it, and why is it, that there's such glory that we don't understand in these young ladies of Braj? So Rohini Ma, she told, listen, before I begin to describe the glory of Braj, Subhadra, you should go and you should guard the door. Because when I begin to speak this katha, wherever Krishna might be, it will enter his heart. And just like a magnet draws iron, he'll immediately be drawn to this place. And sure enough, as Subhadra went and guarded the door, putting her arms across the doorway, Rohini Ma began to describe the glory of Braj. And the intensity of that Braj Katha reached the heart of Krishna while he was sitting in the Sabha, means the meeting hall in Dwarka. And immediately when it entered his heart, just as if he was picked up by a great wind and swept to the quarters where Rohini Ma was, himself and Baladev immediately came there. This is one of the meanings of the verse. Naham tishtami vaikunte yoginam hridayeshuva. Tata tishtami narda. Wherever my devotees are chanting my glories, what to speak of chanting the highest form of the glories of Krishna, which is his Braj Lila. Immediately I come to that place, even leaving Vaikuntha, giving up the heart of yogis in deep meditation, I immediately come to that place. Even the Braj Gopis are so high class, Priya Maniyan Kori, Priya Yariman Kori, Tandra Vatsan, Vedastuti Hoite Hari, Hari Se Morman, that even if I'm chastised by the gopis, if they're calling me ill names, their love for me is so great that hearing that chastisement from them steals my mind away from even high class of prayers like Purusha Shukta. You understand? So when Rohini Ma began talking, Krishna and Balaram came there. Subhadra, who was guarding the door, who was hearing this katha, she had become so absorbed in the mood of this katha that the astasattvic vikar, ecstatic symptoms, came in her body. And her body began to become like a tortoise, melted in. Her eyes became dilated, right? Pulaka, hairs began to stand on her body. And when Krishna and Balaram saw this, looking at her and getting the mood coming in their own hearts, their forms took similar shapes. This is the appearance of Sri Jagannath Baladev and Subhadra as we see them. So really the forms of Jagannath Baladev Subhadra are the prakash of their separate, prakash means like their manifestation of their separation mood from Braj. Narada Muni came and he asked Krishna, oh please, you should grant this darshan to the world of your deep mood of separation from Braj. Krishna said, Tatastu, so be it. So for this reason, we have the deity of Jagannath. Also, more deeply, when Krishna contemplated how to taste the various moods of Radhika, he could not simultaneously enter that mood and be the witness to it. You understand? So he wanted to taste the mood of Radhika, which means his own position, which is called Vishaya Jaktiya, the object of worship. I've explained this over the last couple of days, so hopefully people are catching on to this, and many devotees already know these things. So, giving up that mood, he accepted the mood of Ashraya Jatiya, Bhakti Bhavangikari, the mood of a Bhakta, the highest class of Bhakti here, meaning Shrimati Radhika. But Krishna wanted to see himself in this mood as well. So, Krishna contemplated, right? There's a deep meaning to the Bhagavad Gita verse. What is this verse? Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tajayate ante kalevaram. Sada tat bhava bhavita. The last line says, what bhav you have at the time of leaving this world, kalevaram, that form you will obtain. So the deeper meaning here is that Krishna himself, sitting under a pipal tree, right? when he was doing the Mosala Lila, he's closing out his pastimes at Prabhas, sitting on the pipal tree, he began contemplating his desires like this. So two things manifested from that. One was he received a form in which he could taste the mood of Srimati Radhika. That form, of course, is Sri Sachinandan Gaur Hari. But he also received a form in which he could witness himself in ecstatic mood, seeing himself tasting the mood of Radhika. That mood or that form is called Sri Jagannath Dev. So if you have deities of Sri Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, you should have conceptually this understanding. What is that form? What is the meaning of that form? So we cannot do deity worship on the basis of material proclivities we have. Well, I just like the way it's different. It looks different. Or Jagannath is very merciful. All the forms of Bhagavan are very merciful. And if you want to obtain the mood of service to Bhagavan, you have to cultivate a kantik bhakti towards Bhagavan in a particular form. That is why when we take initiation, especially the Diksha mantras, it is meant to give specificity to your mood of worship. Divya Jnanam Yanta Mantre Bhagavat Swarup Jnanam Tenam Bhagavat Sambandha Visesh Sambandham Jnanamscha. Jiva Goswami is described that at the time of taking Diksha, two things happen. Divya Jnana is given and Kshiyate Papa Nasanam, the removal of sins and blockages like anarthas and so forth, which takes place gradually, but the Shakti or power to do it is given then. So what is the Divya Jnana? Divya Jnanam Yantra Shrimati Mantre. In this mantra, there is Divya Jnana. What Divya Jnana? What form of Bhagavan do I worship particularly, and what is my particular relationship with that form of Bhagavan? That is what is given in the mantra that you chant every day. So now if you analyze the mantras, the culmination of all of our Gayatri mantras, if you're a male person, then you're chanting also Brahma Gayatri, but Brahma Gayatri in its mature form is Kam Gayatri. This is clearly stated in Padma Puran. Whole Leela is described about it. But in the Kam Gayatri, in the Ramananda Samvad, it's described. Apakrita Navina Madan. What is this? Vrindavane Apakrita Navina Madan. Kam Bij Kam Mantra Yandra Upasan. So the Kam Bij and the Kam Gayatri mantra is meant for the upasan of Vrindavane Apakrita Navina Madan, the transcendental Cupid of Vrindavan. So the meaning of this mantra is spoken right here in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So the object of the very mantra that you take, the most mature form of the mantra, and the mantra dhyana or meditation that you take, is on the service of Sri Krishna in Vrindavan. So you can't have an inconsistency or incongruity between your daily meditation in sadhana and your object of worship. So you have to make that the alignment is there if you're worshiping Gaur Nitai. Why? Because that same Krishna that you're worshiping came as Sri Sachinandan Gaur Hari to taste the mood of Radhika, who is the ultimate object of your worship. Because not that directly we want to serve Krishna, we want to serve Krishna in Anugatya, under the guidance of any eternal associate, if it's Sakya Ras or Vatsalya Ras, which is not prominent in our line. But if it's in Madhurya Ras especially, not even the Sakhi Bhav is prominent, but Manjari Bhav is prominent. So if you want to serve like that, then you'll understand Gaur Nitai to be the merciful incarnation of Krishna, one to taste the mood of Radhika and to distribute it to the Bhakta Lok, and Sri Nityananda Prabhu as the Karuna Prakash, the manifestation of the mercy of Mahaprabhu, to distribute it to all the devotees, even the most fallen like Jagai and Madai. You understand? So there has to be context and concept to the nature of your upasan when you're doing deity worship. It's not a ritual. So I'll gather different upacharas, means articles of worship each day, and I'll go and I'll say the mantras and incense in the deep giwik, and then water handkerchief. It's not that. It is a living dynamic in your sadhana and in your bhajan. There's a dhyan or meditation in all of these things. So you have to have conceptually a fixed ideal in your worship. right? And if you have Giriraj, for what reason I have Giriraj? Giriraj is the one who can grant shelter in Braj for the service of Radha and Krishna. If I have Shalagram Shila, what Shila do I have? If you have Damodar Shila, that same Damodar Shila became Radharamanji in Braj. So the worship of Damodar Shila can be manifested as your Chota Murti of Shri Radha Krishna. You understand? So it just has to be very clear. And if you're not clear, then approach any very senior Vaishnava and ask for clarity regarding your deity worship. Of course, you wrote a question. I'm not that kind of high-class Vaishnava like that, but you can go when you have faith, very high-class Vaishnava, and get clarity on the position of your worship. It is not that we accept the idea, oh, it's Bhagavan, and Bhagavan, it's all the same. Ramadi Murti Shukala, Niyame Natistam, all the incarnations, Rama, it's all Krishna's, no problem. That's a fact in Tattva. But we're not trying to develop a philosophical understanding only of what is God. We're trying to develop a relationship with God, and the essence or ingredients in a relationship is a rasa. That rasa begins with a sthai bhav. It means a fixed mood of service in a particular mood of affection called rati. That rati, then when it is combined with the elements like vibhav, anubhav, sattvika bhav, vyabhichari bhav, it becomes bhakti rasa. You understand? So none of that takes place unless there's a fixed ideal and object of worship. That's done with ekantic mood, means one-pointed mood. So you have to align your object of worship with the particular forms of deity or Thakurji that you're serving. So it cannot just be random, or you can't do it out of, like I said, material proclivity that I think this is cool. Or I'm afraid to worship Radha Krishna because I heard there's so many problems. So I'm just going to get Gaurnitai because that's easier. No. It's true that there are elements regarding the nature of the seva that are different. But your ultimate objective is to develop love. So we have to think, if I'm worshiping the deities, I have to go according to the mood of developing love. It's not a ritual, and I'm concerned about just the nature of how to do the ritual. Right? Because then your whole bhajan life becomes niyama agraha. Right? Means that it just becomes ritualistic. And it will produce sukriti, but it will not produce praying. So hopefully this was helpful. There was another question about the nature of doing the Jayadwani, but I think I've spoken on that before, maybe in another, because I'm doing also multitasking here a little bit. So maybe I'll talk about that at another time. But hopefully in understanding your deity worship, hopefully this was helpful. So in summary, your nature of your worship and the nature of the deities you're worshiping should align both conceptually and directly with your mode of worship. Remember that every day in the Southern Bhajan you're doing, starting with your Stav and Studi when you wake up to Guru Dev, and then singing Guru Ashtakam, and in the Guru Ashtakam, everything in Guru Ashtakam is all about Braj mood. There's nothing in there about necessarily worshiping Ayodhya or anything like this. So you just have to be realistic. And then you're doing Tulsi Parikrama and you're asking, oh, please make me a resident of Vrindavan. Please give me Nikunja Seva. Please give me Anugatya to these Sakis. This is all about Vrindavan, right? And then, of course, in most of our temples, we have the actual deity of Shri Radha Krishna, right? And if you have Gaurnitai, that means it is the vehicle, because Se Gauranga Jebe Dube, what is this verse? Gaurangera Rasanave, Se Toranga Jebe Dube, Shri Radha Madhavantaranga. That you have to enter Gaur Lila, and by the deep entrance into Gaur Lila, you'll come up in the pastimes of Radha and Madhav. Even before we give Srimad Bhagavatam class, normally devotees are singing Jaya Radha Madhava. This bhajan is so rasik, so deeply Braj mood, bhajan of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And it is the Udipan, it means the inspiration and stimulus for you to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam. So you can't have mixed things going on, because it won't yield clarity in your bhajan life, right? So again, try to understand conceptually what is our line of worship. Particularly, try to meditate on what mantras were given to you by Sri Guru, and align your worship with the mantras, with your practice. And this is the way to do Thakurji Seva or Deity Seva. Jai Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhaveva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Radhe Radhe.